Hi, I'm Stephanie Rozzo. Welcome to Nature Sketch Creates Long-Tailed Skipper Step-by-Step Painting Instructions video. In this video, I'll be showing you how to paint the long-tailed skipper by using Nature Sketch Creates Step-by-Step Painting Instructions. Help support this tiny business by clicking the like button, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and checking out naturesketchcreate.com. First, collect all your materials and make sure they're ready to go. Remember, this is just a sketch. Take your time, relax, have fun, and don't worry too much if you think you may have made a mistake. Let's get started. So now you can go ahead and transfer the image. Just pick any spot and start tracing over the lines. You want to check it after you draw just a little bit. Hold it down gently in one area. Flip it up and check to see that it's actually transferring. Those lines are going in. You want it to be about a medium pressure. You'll want to be able to see the lines after you transfer them and even after you put in the watercolor, so you can redraw the lines in the end. And this is meant to be relaxing, so put on a podcast or some music or an audiobook and just take your time. Relax and trace over all the lines. Don't worry too much if you think you may have made a mistake. It doesn't need to be exact. So you'll notice that these lines are a little thicker on these spots on the wings. Go ahead and make those thicker when you transfer them as well, so they're easier to see and differentiate while you're painting. Just make the step-by-step a little easier. And you can check at any time to see you transfer the lines. Just kind of flip it up and down like a flip book to check to see if you've missed any in any certain area. It's a great thing to do at the end too, just to check and see if you've missed any lines. You can use your finger to help you figure out where you've already drawn some lines, just to kind of keep track of them. Just flip it up and down like a flip book, moving your eye from one area to the next to double check that you've transferred all the lines. I always end up missing a few. And again, if you did miss any, you can always add them later, so it's okay if you miss them now. I think I've got most of the lines, so I'm going to go ahead and outline the inner part of the common name to transfer it, since my pencil is a little bit smaller than the text. And I'll just draw right over the scientific name to transfer it. Now that I have all the lines transferred, I'm going to go ahead and remove my graphite transfer paper and save that for future use. And I will remove the tape gently from the back of the watercolor paper. And I'll try to remove it gently from the transfer image as well. There wasn't much paper that came up, so I'll go ahead and reuse this tape. If you have a lot of paper that remained, you can compost it or trash it, whatever works for you. Save the transfer image so that you can protect your painting while you're completing the step-by-step instructions. Take your kneaded eraser and find a nice light gray, or make a nice white gray spot, and use that to remove any unwanted marks on your paper, any graphite that got left behind that you don't want, or to even lighten some of these graphite transfer lines, dabbing it over the top. The lines look good to me, so I will move on to step 2. Step 2, paint in Skipper tan and green. So take 16 drops of 25H Hansa Yellow Medium. Make sure before you use these paints, adding them to your palette, that you mix them up really well so that the paint pigment, anything that's kind of settled on the sides or the bottom, gets mixed in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And 1 drop of the 21H sepia. Add a little bit of water by applying some pressure to your water brush barrel, or you can add a little water from your cup if you're using a traditional watercolor paintbrush. Get them all mixed. And we'll be using the wettest, lightest. I'm going to dab this off on my towel and then take it to the side and add lots of water. So it's going to be wet in my palette, not when you add it to your paper. So the water is being added in the palette, making it a lighter color, not as dark or concentrated. And it looks like the right color to me. And I'm going to add that to the entire skipper except for the bottom outer edges of the wings here. And there's this middle band on the head, as you can see, that stays white right here. And also this middle band on the eyes. Let's pick up a little bit more of that paint, dab it off on my towel, and go ahead and apply it, just being very careful not to put it in those areas as I described. And kind of like using a crayon or a marker, you just gently glide right over the area you want to apply it to, treating each one of these spaces as a single area to fill in the color. Again, taking this all the way down to the end of the wing. I like to outline the area. You don't have to do it that way, and then fill it in. Makes it a little easier. It's getting a little dark, so I'm going to dab it off onto my towel, and then maybe apply a little more water when I'm in my palette. Dab it off, and then keep going. And you can just take it as this area is, I'm just taking it as one big shape. Bringing the watercolor all the way down. Starting on one end and moving to the other. Again, I want to remember not to fill in the band, so I'm going to outline right above this area. I'm going to keep white on the bottom of the wings. Single band here, and then fill up to the other area. Kind of like a crayon or a marker, just filling it in. And clean off my brush. This should dry before I end up adding the green, because we're not adding a bunch of water to the paper itself, so it should dry very fast. I'll go ahead and check it before we actually add the green to it. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and mix the green. So I have a 23H sap green. 2 drops of that. 1, 2. And then the 25H Hansa Yellow Medium, we have 4 drops of that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Add a little bit of water. Mix it up. I use the wettest, lightest again, so the least concentrated color, so I'm dabbing it off onto my towel. Adding some water to it. There's still some paint on my brush. Here to the side, I'm adding a little bit of water. Dab it off my towel and check it out and see if it's concentrated enough. Looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit more, so I'm letting some of that water that the color that bled through into this spot go in. Dab it on my towel, check it again. That looks a little bit better. Check it one more time, just to be sure. Looks good. I'm gonna check to make sure this is dry by dabbing it. It feels dry to me. If you move your hand over it to check it, you might end up smudging the paint. So I recommend just kind of dabbing it to feel it. Picking up a little bit more paint, dabbing it off onto my towel before applying it. I'm gonna add it here to this head area. And then to the body and parts of the wings, just like you see in your final reference image and step 2's image. And it doesn't need to be exact, just approximately the same areas. Just kind of add it in, kind of like you're using a crayon or a marker. Just best to start at one end and work towards the other. Like I said, it does not need to be exact, just in the same general spaces. This is just a sketch, and any variation makes your artwork yours and unique to you. And go ahead and clean off my brush, let this dry, and move on to step 3. Step 3, paint in Skipper Chestnut and Blue. So mix the Skipper Chestnut, take 4 drops of the 25H Hansa Yellow Medium, one drop of the 3H Brilliant Cadmium Red, or Brilliant Cad Red, and 1 drop of the 21H Sepia. Again, adding a little bit of water as you mix that in your palette. Cleaning off your brush, use the wet light, so not super wet like their previous 2 colors, like the tan and green, but adding some water and testing it on our paper, seeing if it's dark enough. Looks pretty good to me. So I'm gonna pick up a little bit of that, dab it on my towel, and then adding it to the head, eyes, legs, tail, wings, and thorax. So I'll go ahead and add those in, just like I see in my step 3 image. At this point, you want to be careful to avoid the spots on the wings. And it might be helpful just kind of outline them a little bit and then fill in the space around them. If you have too much water on your brush, feel free to dab it on your towel at any point. You should be able to control where that water is going, where the color is going. For the most part. And if you fill in any of these spots, it's okay. Perfectly imperfect. It's gonna look great. I'm gonna clean off my brush and mix the Skipper Blue. So take just 2 drops of the 8H Ultramarine. 1, 2. Add a little bit of water to it, mix it up. We'll be using kind of a color that has a kind of a not super light or not super dark, so take it to the side a few times. Dab it off onto my towel, pick up a little bit of that medium color. So not a whole bunch of water added to it, but still has some concentration. And dab it on my towel one more time. Make sure that I don't put too much water in. Check to make sure it's dry. It should be dry. Again, we're not adding a lot of water to this, so it dries pretty fast. Having paint that is on your paper that dries quickly is helpful if you're out sketching. You know, so you can move a little faster to get some details in your image. And again, don't need to be exact, just kind of add it in. You can use a little bit of a line motion, or just add it in still, just covering the whole space, whatever works best for you. Maybe leave some of that green underneath on this part. Maybe cover the whole thing. This is your image, so make it yours. But basically just following what's in step 3's image. In general, not exact. And don't forget to get the little strip of blue, the edge of the head there. And when you've added all the blue that you want to have added, go ahead and clean off your brush, let this dry, and move on to step 4. Step 4, paint in Skipper Sepia and Green. So mix the Skipper Sepia, 21H Sepia. I just want a couple drops of that, like we did with the blue. Add a little bit of water to it with your clean brush. And then take it to the side after dabbing it on your towel. Add water to it, dab it on your towel again, and test it out on your test paper. Make sure it's the right color. That looks pretty good to me. And I'm going to add that to the wings, eyes, legs, antenna, head, and tails, just like you see in step 4's image. And like before, it doesn't need to be exact, so we just want to get approximate. And I think I'm going to protect my image from my hand because I want to rest it here in order to get this line on the antenna, just to keep my hand steady. So go ahead and add it like you see in step 4's image. It does not need to be exactly the same. Every time I paint, I feel like, depending on my mood, this is how I'm feeling that particular day, ends up being just a little bit different. Once you have all of the sepia added, go ahead and clean off your brush and pick up a little bit of the green. Test it out on your paper, make sure it's the right concentration of color. And I'm going to add it with a lined motion like you see in step 4's image. And again, I'm going to start from the top to the bottom. Just kind of adding it in. It doesn't need to be exact. Just getting it in there a little bit, keeping some of that green color showing through. This gives it a little bit more of a mimicking that iridescent look that this color and look that this butterfly has. So the really light and the really dark color next to each other kind of mimics that a little bit. And go ahead and clean off your brush, let it dry, and move on to step 5. Go ahead and pick up a little bit of that more concentrated, drier, darker chestnut color. Test it out on your paper, make sure it's the right concentration. Looks good, so dab it off on your towel. And then add it to the upper wings, head, eyes, legs, and thorax like you see in step 5's image. And you may want to protect your painting from your hand while you rest your hand on the paper or the table while you apply that. If you have too much water at any point, just dab it off onto your towel. I went over that twice while it was still wet just because I didn't have a dark enough color. I just picked up a little bit more and just went over it one more time. So after you're done with that, go ahead and clean off your brush and pick up the really dark, driest concentrated color, a dry blue. Dab it off on your towel before applying it to your test paper and check that's the right color. Let's compare it to your step-by-step lesson. And then add it in a lined motion. And you can get a nice fine tip on your brush by just rolling it on your towel beforehand. Then go ahead and just line, adding it in the same direction as the lines you transferred. Those are there to help you figure out what direction to add these little hairlines. Kind of add them in. They don't have to be the same amount. Can be a little bit less, can be a little bit more. Just add those in there. It doesn't need to be the exact same spot, just the same general area. And whenever you pick up more paint, just dab it off onto your towel before applying it to your paper. And then clean off your brush and move on to step 6 when you let this dry. Step 6, paint in Skipper Sepia. So I'm going to go ahead and take that Skipper Sepia, the drier, more concentrated, test it out on your paper, make sure it's the right color. And then we're adding that to the wings, tails, eyes, head, antenna, and legs, as you see in step 6's image. So you can just go throughout, make sure you have a nice little tip, and add it to the image just like you see there in step 6. Go ahead and clean off your brush. Make sure you get all that sepia out. And then you can pick up the wettest, lightest, least concentrated blue. You may have to add a little bit of water to that. Test it on your paper, a little bit more water. Make it really lightly concentrated, pulling actually some to the side, adding more water. Test it out, looks good. I'm just going to add that to the same areas as you see in step 6, so just kind of over the thorax a bit, not covering everything, but just kind of adding a little more to the abdomen. Just over these areas, adding it, just bringing a little bit more of that light blue color into it all. And when you're done with that, you can go ahead and let it dry and move on to step 7. Step 7, add ink lines. Start with the smallest tipped micron, the 005 black micron. Go ahead and redraw the lines you transferred and all these little hairlines that you see in your final reference image and in your transfer image. And go ahead and also, if you added the common name and the scientific name, go ahead and re-outline the common name and write in the scientific name as well. Next, I'm going to use the 01 black micron to add some lines. I'm going to write the scientific name to thicken it up a little bit, outline the legs, antenna, and hatch the inner circle of the eye. Refer to 7A in your final reference image. And by hatching, I just mean do kind of a cross, so lines going down and then lines going back up the other direction. So again, there and then there, just kind of hatching. Alternatively, you can just kind of fill it in if you don't feel like hatching is the right kind of technique for you. Lastly, I'm going to use the 08 black micron, the thickest of the 3 microns, recommended for this step-by-step lesson. And I'm going to go ahead and use it to fill in the common name and to thicken some of the lines throughout, like you see in 7B and in your final reference image, and I recommend referring to both of those. And I'm going to basically be adding it to the lower antenna line to outline the eyes, various parts of the body, hairs here, just a few here and there, and lower leg lines, outline the wings, and some of the lines on the tails as well. And you can again see that in 7B or your final reference image here. And feel free to make this your own and add some lines that aren't in there. If you want to thicken some other ones up, just go ahead and do that. This is your image. All done. And if you think you missed anything, you'd like to add a little bit more paint or a little bit more ink, go ahead and do that. Just make sure you let it dry in between adding a little bit more ink or a little bit more paint. Both will smudge and smear if they're not dry. And don't get too carried away. This is just a sketch. Great job observing your world and keep practicing. Thank you for joining me. I hope you had fun and had a chance to relax a little. If you like this video, click the like button and subscribe to this YouTube channel. A few options of what to do with this painting. You can share it using the hashtag NatureCreateArt, have it featured on our social media, share it on our Facebook fan art page, punch holes in and add it to your sketchbook, gift it, and you can also just frame it and display it around your house. Check out the Nature Sketch Crate website for future crates and to sign up for regular updates.